What is up, fellas? Today I'm going to be showing you how to win at Countmaster. Countmaster requires mostly simple math and some pattern recognition, and I'm just going to break it down into 4 different sections and show you as many variations as I can. Um, Firstly, we'll have the opening section, which is where you start until almost round 3. Then we have the middle section, which is round 3 through round 11. Then we have what I call the bridge, which is round 11 and 12. The key is that end of 12 there where everyone seems to get stuck. And then everything after 12 is what's the end game. So I'm just going to show a bunch of variations, talk through them, and hopefully it'll get some more people past 12. So first up, we've got the openings. I got 4 of them to show. The first one is going to be a times 250 variation. I think it was. It's a pretty easy one. It's the second easiest, I think. And you just follow the screen. 150 simple. Times 6 is going to be higher. 700 is going to be smaller. Nothing crazy. Take it in half or take it in a quarter. Take it in half. And then lastly, -2. Nothing crazy about that one. Next, we've got the 9 variations, my personal favorite. It's pretty much the exact same opening, except instead of times 2, it's 100. Then we get the 9 2150. Always pick 2150. Divide by 3. Then you're going to do times 3, unless the other side is 1800, but it's not. And then we're just going to take it in half, otherwise it's going to be smaller. The third variation is the 8600 or 86, and we're just gonna, again, it's an opening. It's pretty simple math, nothing crazy going on. But it's always nice to just make sure you start off on the right foot, because the idea is you don't want to mess anything up. But yeah, so nothing crazy there. And then lastly, we've got, I think, the easiest of the 4 openings. It's it's just really easy. You know, obviously 200, obviously double the 4. Nothing crazy about it. Again, 1403, if it was 1800, it'd be a different story, but it's not. And again, half instead of, cut it down more. So now we're working on the middle game. We're going to take this first one a little slow. I might pause at some points, point some things out that I think are pretty useful to get through this section. This is most people's stomping ground, so to speak. This is where they live and die. And we're just going to try and get you guys past it. So starting off, we've got pretty simple math. Nothing crazy here. This part right here, we're doubling over getting to 3100. Right here, I'm going to pause for a second. So this one always comes up every single time. It always gives 2 negatives, and it always gives times 2 divided by 8. Never, ever pick the times 2 divided by 8. A lot of people do it because it messes with their mind. They see a positive and a negative, and well, it must be better than 2 negatives. It's not. I promise you, it has never been better. Unless they change it, it will never be better. So we're going to go through that. It's going to bring us to 1,000. Simple stuff right here. Bring down to 400. Plus 800 is better than times 2. I'm going to pause it real quick again right here. So a lot of times it'll give you add, divide, subtract, multiply kind of thing, and it'll cross that with a divide, multiply, or a multiply, divide. Kind of like what we have here. On the left we've got subtract, multiply, on the right we've got divide, multiply. Excuse me. So, on paper, just at first glance, the left one kind of looks better, just because you're dealing with a smaller subtraction. Instead of bringing it down to 400, it'll bring it down to 600. However, the trick I've seemed to notice is usually, now it's not always true, but usually when you've got a separation of more than 2-digit places between the division and the multiplication, usually that's the correct side to pick. So in this case, we've got divided by 3 times 8. That's a separation of 5. Now, 9 times out of 10, that's probably going to be the right choice. You know, if we do a quick math here, that'll bring us down to 400. 4 times 8 is 3,200. If we take the left side, we're down to 600. 600 times 4 is 2,400. But yeah, so just a little trick if you're not trying to do that quick math and just trying to like, bam, I know this is right. If you see a big separation in numbers like that, it's a pretty safe assumption, at least in the early game here, that that's the correct way to go. So continuing on, got more simple math. You'll find that a lot of times it'll bring you down to 2,700. Here's another thing, always do subtract, divide instead of divide, subtract. Same thing with add and multiply. I'm going to pause it right here for a second. So right here, you can get 3 possible variations. There's the left side addition number being anything between 1,000 and 16 to 1,800. There's also a times 3 times 3 plus times 3. That one, I could not get any examples of. It comes up so rarely, but the rest of them, this is pretty much what you're always going to see. The quick math for it is if it's plus 1,000 or plus 1,100 times 2, pick the times 2 times 3 side. But if it's 1,200 or higher times 2, pick that side. So we're just going to do that. This one, it always gets people. You want to get down to 1,800 because there's always going to be something like that following. This one, I know I said to always do subtract, divide, but when you're dealing with a divided by 5 after subtract 1,200, don't do that. Same thing with minus 3,200 divided by 4, I think it is. And then again here, plus 2,000 is going to be better than plus 1,800. And then again, we're going to break the rule and divide, then subtract. And then just 400 and bring to 1,800. This next variation is just going to show a couple of things different. It's a little bit different of a starting middle game. Those digits weren't separated at all. That's how I knew not to do the divided by 5 times 6. And again, don't pick the times 2 divided by 8. It's horrible. It'll get you every time. And some simple arithmetic here, always down to 400. And then pick the addition and multiplication. And then here, always pick the 50. Always pick the 50. It doesn't look that good at first glance, but I promise it is. And then bigger than 1,200. Gonna get back down to 1,800. This one, plus 1,800 is better than plus 1,400. And never times 2 divided by 8. Simple math here. Some more simple math. And bring us to 2,000 instead of 1,600. And once again, bring us to 6,000. Or sorry, 8,000. And then never the 3,200 divided by 4. It's a bad one. It'll drop you real low real fast. Next up, we got a little more variation. I'm going to pause it right here. So a lot of people like to go for the times 5 plus 500. It's very tempting. All the numbers are bigger than the other side, but it's not the right answer. You add then multiply. So if you do times 5, you're going to get 2,500 plus 5, you're at 3,000. Whereas if you go on the left side, you're going to add to 800, multiply by 4, you're going to get at 3,200. The only way, there's not even an only way you would go to the other side, unless the left side was just straight negatives. But it's not, so we're going to add multiply and get that 3,200. Then we're going to subtract divide. And we're going to divide by 2. It's going to be higher. And multiply by 3. It's going to be higher. And subtract by 5. It's going to be higher. And once again, add, then multiply. And once again, subtract, then divide. And then it's going to be higher. And it's still 1,400, so we're taking that side. And we want to get back down to the 1,800. You'll notice that there's certain keys that are always going to be constant. The 3,300, the 2,700, the 1,800, the 1,000. These are all constant numbers that pop up at generally the same time in stages across multiple games. So sometimes you'll find it's easier to just, if you have to do the math, it's easier to just, if you can only do one side and you know it has to be a certain number, and you do the math on one side and it's not that number, then you know it's going to be the other side. That gets more useful in past endgame stages when you have less time to solve. And here we're going to be showing right here. I'm going to pause. So up until this point, I've done, when we get to this part where you have 1,800, I've done always the multiplication side. It's not always that. If you ever get a plus 18 plus 18, and the left side addition, or sorry, not addition, the left side multiplication is 2, you're going to go with the plus. Because the math you're seeing here, it looks complicated, but it's not. Essentially, the right side is 1,800 times 3, and the right side is plus 3,000. And the left side's plus 3,000. It's not going to be the left side. And then again, subtract, divide. And then here, they added this variation like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it got me for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I really like doing minus 1,100. I don't know what it is, but that's not what you're gonna do. You're gonna do divided by 4, and then we're gonna do subtract the 300, and then we're gonna do the times 15. Easiest choice, times 15. Then we're gonna do add then multiply, subtract then divide, and we're right as rain going into the end. And then again, another variation here. We've got another 50 we're going to pick. And finally, here it is. I'm going to pause. This is what I was talking about earlier. You always If it's 1000 or 1100, you always pick the multiplication. 1200 or higher, you pick the addition. Yeah, it's going to bring us to that 36, which will bring us down to that nice 18. And from there, it's pretty much stuff that we've already seen before. We've got that 1104 again. Pick that, minus the 300, times the 15. Nothing crazy going on. Times 2 times 2. And never the 3204. And some simple arithmetic to wrap that up. And here, we've got some more easy math. I almost messed that one up. Again, subtract, divide, and divide. It's going to be bigger. And here, always pick the 1300. It's never the 3. Then we're going to divide. It's going to be a 50, which is weird. And then I'm going to pause here real quick. So, again, the rule for almost the entire thing has been add then multiply. This is one of those breakers to that rule. You always pick the times 3 plus 150 side. Don't do the plus 450 times 2. It looks really good, sounds really good, you know, and will bring you to 2600, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for 27. Now we got it. Subtract, divide, and easy arithmetic. And that's plus 1000, so we're going to multiply, and we're going to get down to 1800. And 2 18s is better than 1. And subtract, divide. You'll see that there's a lot of patterns going on here. There's a lot of pattern recognition in this. They can change up everything at will and do different iterations of stuff, but generally it's the same cycles. It just might be different cycles. Yeah, nothing crazy here. Just simple math that we've already done. So here we've got the bridge. This is where pretty much everyone messes up on and gets stuck. They see that fabled 1500, 1600, and they're under it. And I'm going to show you how to get past it because there's 6 possible variations of these numbers, and I got all of them compacted into here. So starting out on this first one, you'll see you've got plus 1000 plus 800 times 3 divided by 2. We are going to pick the plus 800 plus 1000. And then if I pause right here again, you'll see that we've got divided by 3 plus 1100, subtract 24 times 2. Generally speaking, usually you pick divide then add. For pretty much every other cycle you do this. However, when you get to this stage, if you see a 2400 on the side, you always pick the 2400. The divided by 3 plus 11, it's not wrong. In fact, in the other cycle, that's going to be the correct answer. But if you see a minus 2400, you pick that. So we're just going to go ahead and pick it. And then we're going to pause. And right here, you're going to see we've got divided by 2 plus 400. We've got minus 18 times 2. Generally, in the other cycle, you don't pick divide and add on the third of 3 for stage 12. However, since we picked 24 in the last one, we're going to do the divide and add on this cycle, and we should get ourselves to a nice comfy 1600. And boom, through to the end game. In this other variation, you'll see we've got times 6 divided by 2 and times 2 plus 600. The rule is if the digits are bigger than 2, that's generally the right answer. That holds true for this. The times 6 divided by 2 is the better answer. So we're going to pick that. And now you'll see this is the exact same as the last one we just showed. We've got divided by 3 plus 11, except this time it's minus 2500. This time we're going to pick the divided by 3 plus 1100 because the other side shows 25. If it showed 24, we'll pick the 24, but since it shows 25, we're picking the divide. So we're just going to go ahead and pick that. And like I had said earlier, because we picked the divide and add already, we're not going to do it for the third cycle here. We're going to pick the minus 15 times 2. It's just how the math works. The minus 15 brings it down to 800 times 2 is 1600, which is the perfect number you need to go into the past endgame. And boom, just like that, we're there. So you've made it to the end game. Rules are still the same. We're going to be doing basic arithmetic and a little more complex stuff. Plus and multiply, subtract and divide, and simple. You'll see this plus 400 times 2 thing. Don't pick the 400. Gets me every now and again, but you always want that number to be 1800 for the divide by 3. We've got subtract divide, and minus 800, and divided by 2. You'll notice that the speed is about to pick up a little bit. We're going to add then multiply, and subtract then divide. And it's always keeping you at that 100 mark. You'll notice a stage will bring you up, and then the next stage will bring you down. Always to keep you at that 100. And you can see we're still following all the same rules. Dividing and adding, subtract, then divide, add, then multiply, bigger than 2 digits, all the same principles. And that's going to allow you to pretty much coast through most of this most of the time. Sometimes they'll switch it up on you. It'll get a little funky, but you'll just have to be on your toes for that. Still adding and then multiplying. Divide then add. And perfect 100. Bring it down. You'll notice there that it wouldn't let me switch to the other side. It's kind of a game bug. Happens every now and again. It won't let you do it for a second, but just don't get freaked out. Just take a second, do a slow push over. You should be fine. And then this is where, yeah. So we'll get more into that in a second. But we're just gonna show off a different cycle. I actually have a buddy with me this time. When you ever pass 12, this almost never happens. But the big game breakers are 19 to 21 for stages, and then stage 29, that 11-1200 thing, because it breaks the status quo that you've been doing for the last, 16 stages. Because we can coast off of the general principles we already know. Meanwhile, when you get to 29 especially, that's when it breaks it. It throws a wrench in the game, which is fine. It's only fair. You just got to make sure you're on your toes. I recorded all this on the same day. I spent about 2 hours just playing this over and over and over, recording everything, trying to get different stuff. And when you play a lot of it, it can start burning you out a little bit. You can start forgetting what normally is common knowledge, but we're still cruising. Subtract, divide, get ourselves to that perfect 100. It's always going to be a perfect 100. If you got less than 100 on something like that, you messed up somewhere. And we're going to add, multiply, divide, add. Nothing crazy, minus 500. Sometimes if you already know the answer, start looking ahead at the top of your screen to try and figure out that, because you'll notice we're only getting 2 seconds and we only do after stage 20. So you got to start being really quick. Really, really quick. And you'll see once we get to the stage 9 again, I'm going to get the old 1,000. And I'll explain why once we get to the post Endgame. So here we got one of my better runs where we're actually going to make it past this 29 threshold. And I'll slow it down so we can go through it together. So hopefully you can break it too. So still following the same stuff. Still going to get to that 100. Simple math here. Got the 2-digit gap. Gonna pause it for a second. I just want to break down these next two because this is where I usually tend to mess up and where I'm sure anyone else that gets this high likes to mess up too. So up until this point, between stages 13 and 29, every time you got to divide and add, that was always the option. Every single time. They test that once you get to 29 because they're going to give you two options of divide and add. So if you zombie brain it, like I generally do by the time I get this high, you're going to pick divide add both times, get to 1,000, and then be like, well, shoot, that sucks. So the first one, we're going to break it down. It's usually, it should be divide add, and then I think it's subtract multiply, whatever the not divide add option is, because that'll bring you to 1,200. So we'll do the math quick just to show that it's right. So we got 1,000. Now if we divide that, or not divide, if we subtract that by 500, we got 500 times 4 is 2,000. Okay, 1,000 divided by 2, it's 1,000 plus 1,600 is 2,600. So earlier in this video I talked about if you know what a number is supposed to be, solve one side to see if it's that number. So this is one of those situations where you know every single time without fail at this stage 29, you know that your answer has to be 1,200. So because you only have 2 seconds, the human brain, let's be honest, for pretty much all of us, we're not going to be able to do both of those problems in 2 seconds. But you can do at least one, you know? And in this case, it's going to be the left one that's going to give you the correct answer, so to speak. Because you'll do the minus 1,500, which will bring you to 600, and then times 2, which will bring you to 1,200. And we'll just see that play out right here. And voila, we're into stage 30. After you beat 29, all gloves are off. Totally new problems, totally new variations. Just everything is on the table. and pretty much it's just a how far can I get before I sputter out kind of thing. And you can see I messed up there by not following tradition. But yeah, so that's gonna be just about everything. Um, Basically, as long as you follow the simple principles of what to and to not do, you should be pretty good to make it past 12, maybe past 29, maybe into some new uncharted territory, and yeah, it should be fun. So I hope this video helped. Thanks.